Excel Tips. My name is Neil Blackwood, and in this video we're going to be looking at how you can apply the 7 habits of highly effective people to Excel. They are both children of the 80s. Excel was released in 1985 and the 7 habits of highly effective people was published in 1989. Now, I read the book in the early 90s, which is also when I started using Excel. Time magazine in 2011 included the book in the top 25 most influential business management books. It is a classic self-help book and it is still relevant today. It didn't really talk about specific tools or things like that. It was mainly principle focused, and the habits that it covered can be applied to almost anything. It is still a worthwhile book to read. So I wanted to focus on the habits as they apply to Excel. I've sort of rearranged the habits. The book was written with 3 habits that are basically personal based, and then 3 habits that were interpersonal based, and then 1 habit that was sort of overarching all of the other 6 habits. But I've rearranged them to some extent in how I apply them to Excel. So the first habit is seek first to understand. Now, these are the type of questions you need to ask if you are building an Excel model from scratch. Who's it for? What's it for? How often is it required? Are you making comparisons? And what are you comparing values with? Are you comparing it to the budget, last year, the forecast? Are you aiming to build a report or a dashboard or both or something else? Do you need flexibility? Are you going to be interacting with anybody? And where is it going to be used? That's pretty important because Excel on the web has quite a few limitations at the moment, whereas Excel's desktop doesn't really have any limitations. Once you've sort of worked your way through and asked lots of questions, then you can look at first things first, which is the second habit that I think applies in sequence when you're working with Excel. Now, as part of that habit, this matrix was introduced. I think it's called the Eisenhower Matrix, and the idea is that when you're working, you have important things and you have urgent things, and when those two interact, you've pretty much got to do that straight away. Also, you have urgent things that maybe aren't that important. Now, this is where we tend to spend a lot of time, and this is where we should be delegating, because if you can reduce the amount of time you spend here, then you can improve your productivity. And the idea is to spend most of your time in this one where it's important but not urgent. And by doing that, by planning ahead, you should hopefully reduce the amount of things that are urgent because you've already planned ahead. This is the quadrant that we need to avoid. So it's not urgent and it's not important. So we shouldn't really be doing anything in that quadrant. So that quadrant might be fun, but it's probably not going to help your productivity. So that's the one you try to eliminate. And if you can delegate more out of this one, then you can spend more time in this one and hopefully reduce all of those urgent things. So first things first is all about prioritizing, and so once you've figured that out, you might need to go back to and ask some more questions, this seek first to understand. So there could be a few iterations between these first 2 habits. Once you've got that and you've settled down what you need, got your priorities, then that's when you should write a specification. It's a good idea to get the specification down on paper. Now, that's something that you could then pass through your AI platform. So AI is really good at reading and coming back with ideas, so you can ask it, what am I missing? What should I be covering? And again, you might be going back to that first habit and asking some more questions. So once you've got your specification, then This is actually the habit that I sort of use most in terms of beginning with the end in mind. So the idea is that you start at the end and then you work backwards basically towards the data. And then you've got to figure out, do we have the data? We might be wanting a statistic that isn't being captured. So you might need to set up a little database to capture a statistic if it's important, but it's not being captured. Also, this logo is Power BI. And the solution might not be Excel. It might be Power BI. Power BI is better for dashboarding. It's also got better interaction and also got better security. So depending on what you're trying to build, the final solution might be Power BI. Now, Power BI and Excel work well together, and you might find that you might prototype in Excel as well. So you might be trying to like a proof of concept in Excel to make sure things work, and then you might migrate that to Power BI to make it more interactive, improve the security, and make it easier to share. Be proactive. That's actually the first habit in the book, but I've got it as the fourth. This is where once you've decided on the report that you want to build, then you've got to try and figure out what Excel features and functions you can bring together to solve the problem and create the report. Check out the In the Black website. All of these topics have been covered fairly extensively there. They've all got videos and articles. All of these work really well together, especially formatted tables. So a formatted table is a list that you've told Excel to treat as a table, and it has a lot of built-in functionality. When you use Power Query to import your data, it creates a formatted table, or it will drop the table into the data model. And from there, you can build pivot tables. You can work with Power Pivot. Once it's in a formatted table, you can use formulas and functions, also dynamic arrays. Excel's just released Python in Excel, so Python code can be written in Excel cells now. Slices are a way to do filtering, so you can actually build in some interaction to your reports. And some old school macros, VBA. You might have heard that macros are dead or that macros aren't needed anymore. It's true that Power Query has replaced a lot of what macros used to do. I used to spend hours writing macros that now Power Query can do at the click of a button. But there are still lots of automation options. So where we mentioned earlier about delegating, so macros can automate a lot of tasks, and that makes it a lot easier to delegate because you can get things down to button clicks, which is much easier to delegate. Macros are also another area that you can apply AI to Excel. So most of the AI platforms can write very good VBA code. VBA stands for Visual Basic for Applications, by the way. Also, most of the AI platforms can also assist you in writing your formulas and functions, and you can even get them to explain existing formulas and functions to you. Just be aware that Power Query, as well as importing into Excel, is also what is used to import into Power BI. So any skills you learn in Excel can be directly applied to Power BI. In terms of the data model and Power Pivot, the same functionality also exists in Power BI. So again, what you learn in Excel can be applied to Power BI. So in terms of being proactive, it can mean building in validations to your models to make sure everything validates. Can mean using things like drop-down cells so that users don't have to type as much, so they can just select from a drop-down. Excel's drop-downs have improved recently as well, so that's something that's worth checking out. You need to build in error handling to your formulas, so you can use the if error and the if NA function. Also build in some error handling to your VBA macros. Macros are written in the Visual Basic for Applications code, and you need to build in error handling for that as well. So you've got to be thinking ahead. You've got to be trying to think about what could go wrong and how you can cope with that in your model. The next habit is synergise. So all of Excel's functions and features work really well together. So in terms of synergise, I see this as you might be able to use the data that you've got for something else. So there are other applications for it. And the same when we go back and have a look at VBA macros and custom functions, these are things that you can create that can be reused. So you can create your own functions. So you might be able to create a specific function for your organization, which could be used by other people. And custom functions and VBA are really easy to share in an organization. Having said that, some organizations actually ban macros and VBA. Macros and VBA have a long history, but early in that history, hackers sort of took over and they spread some viruses using VBA. So because of that, we now have a lot of VBA security that's involved, and that's why some organizations will ban the use of VBA and macros. But if you're allowed to use it, then that's where you can, as I say, make a lot of savings with automation and share those across your organization. Custom functions, again, they're fairly easily shared throughout organizations. So that's where I see the synergies in that you might be building a model that actually can be used for other things, or the data can be used for other things. Now, sharpen the saw. So the name of this habit relates to a story that's in the book. So someone's walking through the woods and they see a man sawing down a tree. So this was before chainsaws. And they asked the guy, "How long have you been sawing?" And he said, "Hours and hours." And the guy says, "Well, shouldn't you sharpen your saw?" And the guy says, "No, I haven't got time to sharpen the saw. Can't you see I'm cutting this tree down?" And we all get caught up in that. We're so busy working that we forget that we need to maybe improve the tools that we've got. So obviously a sharpened saw is a lot more effective than a blunt saw. And so sharpening the saw was all about improving yourself. So going to training, learning new techniques, learning how to use new tools so that you can improve what you're doing. And part of that, while we're talking about tools, is this quote from Abraham Maslow. Now, Abraham Maslow was quite famous for creating his hierarchy of needs. He was a psychologist, but this is a quote that is fairly applicable to Excel. It's tempting if the only tool you have is a hammer to treat everything as if it was a nail. And you see that in Excel, where people will learn the if function and the sum function, and they'll try and solve all of their problems using only those two functions. Excel has hundreds of functions, and if you master probably 20 or 30 of them, you'll be able to provide a lot more solutions in Excel. So learning about new functions, features, things like Power Query, which is the best way to import data into Excel, those sort of things are part of sharpening the saw. Learn new skills so that you can be more effective. Now, the one habit that I couldn't really apply to Excel was the habit of win-win. So this was more about when you are negotiating. So the idea is that you should think win-win so that both parties can win. Rather than think sort of win-lose, it's better to think win-win because there's more motivation on both sides, if you like. In terms of negotiation, if you are negotiating for the project or you're trying to negotiate people's time, then that's where you might be thinking win-win. But in terms of just Excel and applying it, I couldn't really think of much of an application for the win-win habit in building Excel models. So The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People by Stephen R. Covey is a classic business and self-help book. It stood the test of time. It's just as applicable now as when it was written. And when you combine those habits with Excel, which has also stood the test of time, you can build more robust and flexible models. Thanks for watching.